With the release of the heroic version of the raid, we saw 3 new weapons that may be worthy of being placed pretty highly on top of the damage-dealing weapons list. The most polarizing of the bunch is the raid heavy machine gun, If Materia. Materia's bonuses are triple tap and triple double, but much like the scout rifle, triple double pulls ammo from your reserves into your magazine for the bonus shot. It doesn't just come out of thin air. You maybe didn't notice it on the scout rifle because it fires really slowly and primary ammo is plentiful. So before we can get into actual damage numbers, we need to try to figure out how many shots you can actually get, in theory, with this machine gun. If you have 0 ammo bonuses equipped, the machine gun can hold 196 total shots. The machine gun bonus on your boots gives you 241, and machine gun boots and a chest armor bonus gets you 310 shots. There are 3 ways of setting up your machine gun as well, which is a pain in the butt for the purposes of trying to figure out what the best option is. You can do extended mag, which brings your magazine total up to 88 shots, speed reload, which gives you 70, or braced frame, which gives you 60. For the purposes of this test, I went with extended mag for reasons I'll talk about in a little bit. The first thing we'll do is attempt to simulate how many shots we could possibly get with the machine gun if we were perfect and hit a crit every single time. We start with 88 shots, 87 is 1 shot fired, 86 is 2 shots fired, 85 is 3 shots fired. But as soon as that third shot hits, we gain 2 back into the magazine, so now we're up to 87. So 88, 87, 86, then 87, 86, 85, then 86, 85, 84. We repeat this process all the way to 0, and by doing this, in theory, we get a possible 260 shots if we hit every single crit. If you're not using extended mag, you won't get as many shots, but the process is the same for calculating. However, a snag I ran into while trying to perform this simulation on a Devil Walker is that it's hard. It's hard to hit every single crit. There are not many enemies in the game that will let you shoot at a spot on their body that is counted as a crit spot every single time. While performing this test on a Devil Walker, I only got about half the shots to proc triple double, and I can tell because it only pulled 43 bullets out of a theoretical 87. Granted, I didn't hit every single shot, but it felt like it should have been more. Either way, we'll move on, and for now, pretend that we can be perfect and have the gun work exactly as we think it should. Vosik is our target. This is on normal mode, as to not have Vosik's light level mess with any data points. With our 390 Materia, we deal 942 damage per shot without weapons of light against Vosik. Now, a big limiting factor against Vosik is time. You only have about 20 seconds from the split second his shield is removed until the Siva density phase triggers. You can get 2 or 3 more seconds of shooting in after it hits, but this obviously comes with risk. This is why whenever I've said in the past that you can fire X amount of shots comfortably, it means with as little risk as possible. So is it even possible to fire 260 shots of this weapon in time? Well, actually yes, it is. 65 shots took about 4.3 seconds to fire, times 4 is 260 shots in 17.2 seconds, approximately. By the time you would finish reloading, you would have to leave. So the most you could reasonably do is 260 shots in a row if the weapon is working exactly as we think it should, and you hit every single crit. I will reiterate that hitting every single crit, especially with extended mag and not braced frame, is more on the side of unreasonable than it is reasonable. Okay, 260 shots, 942 damage per shot without weapons of light. That's 244,920 damage. Multiply by 1.35 for weapons of light, and we get 330,642 damage. If we were to take the actual weapons of light damage number, it's 1,272 per shot, 260 shots, that's 330,720 damage, less than 100 damage, probably because of rounding. However, this is a simulation of perfection, of hitting every single crit. So what do some more realistic tests look like? Well, let's take a look. Here's the test with weapons of light and extended mag in practice. First of all, you need to be very close to the boss to have this work well. I end up doing 254,459 damage, well below perfection, and this was the better of the tests, of which another test, for example, I only got 230,000 damage with weapons of light. This next test is without weapons of light, but with braced frame, so it's much easier to control. Ultimately, I did 181,622 damage. Without Weapons of Light, but with Extended Mag instead of Braced Frame, I did 181,630 damage. These two tests resulted in a difference of 8 damage. 8 damage. That's how consistent they were. If we had Weapons of Light on these two tests, we'd be looking at about 245,000 damage. So, in a perfect crit-filled world, if you hit all of your crits and the gun works exactly as we think it should, you would deal about 330,000 damage with a 390 Materia against Vosik on normal. Outbreak Prime, on average, does that amount of damage, and you don't even need to be perfect to do that kind of damage. We do not live in a perfect world. You will probably not be perfect with this gun. You should expect to do about 240,000 damage in Vosik's 20-second timer with a 390 Materia. Obviously, this goes up and down depending on what mode you're fighting him in, your light level, and the gun's light level. Needless to say, this stacks up poorly towards some of the other weapons tested on Vosik. It doesn't beat Sleeper, G-Horn, or Outbreak Prime, and it doesn't beat a bunch of the snipers either. I did a very quick test on Aksis during the third teleport to make sure nothing weird was going to happen, and sure enough, nothing weird happened. In a test with many, many bullets fired, I did not even break 200,000 damage without Weapons of Light. Outbreak Prime somehow beats this thing. Here's the thing with me that kind of seals the deal for this weapon, even regardless of damage. With this weapon, you need to get really, really close to the boss in order to have a good chance of dealing a lot of damage to it via crits. When you need to get this close already, well, you might as well throw a sword in your hands, at least for someone like Aksis. Not only is a sword easier to use, it has a higher damage potential as well. You don't need to worry about crits, you don't need to worry about controlling the weapon. Hell, even with other weapons like Sleeper Simulant, G-Horn, you don't need to worry nearly as much about the recoil or the stability. You're putting in a lot of effort for not that much payout compared to other weapons. And if for whatever reason the boss turns his head or you can't get crits on it anymore, then the machine gun loses a ton of its power. So, a sort of final verdict would be that it's a really fun gun for boss damage that, in a damage comparison, just falls short compared to other, more efficient weapons. I do have two other machine guns that I tested, Super Good Advice and Nemesis Star. I realized that, yes, I forgot Quillam's Terminus, but I'm trying to keep it to stuff in Rise of Iron. Not everyone's going to go back to King's Fall to try to get one, but I could do it in the future. So, Super Good Advice, pretty simple test here. Shoot the boss until you run out of bullets. Base ammo capacity is 130 shots. If you have double ammo bonuses, it's 206 shots. It took me about 13 seconds to fire off everything in my gun, 130 shots, plus any that I might have missed for extras, so I would say that it's somewhat reasonable to be able to fire off 206 shots on Vosik in his vulnerability window, so we will use that for our simulation. 386 Super Good Advice, 1174 damage per crit with no weapons, 206 shots. This assumes perfection, that all shots are crits. I would say the majority of crits is possible. All crits, maybe not reasonable. If we hit every single crit from 206 bullets, that gives us 241,844 damage with no Weapons of Light. With weapons, it would be 326,489 damage. On my brief tests, I did it with 130 shots. So perfection with 130 shots is 152,620 damage. I did 150,036 damage, so pretty close. 98.3% perfect. If I were to simulate a cycle with 206 bullets with the damage that I just did, I would have gotten 237,749 damage, or 320,961 damage with Weapons of Light. So that kind of damage is on par with something like an Outbreak Prime if you ran with double bonuses. Is it better than Outbreak Prime on Vosik? No. Finally, we have a 390 Nemesis Star new exotic machine gun. Side note, before we begin, did we really need another solar heavy weapon? Why couldn't have this been void damage? I mean, it's a good gun in general, don't get me wrong, but we did not need another solar heavy. Bungie, please, make this void or something in an upcoming patch. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so, this weapon's exotic perk is The gun fires faster when you start shooting, and then it slows down. A reverse Thunderlord, if you will, although not as extreme. This led to the question of, what is more damage, or what is more beneficial? Burst fire or sustained fire? In all of the tests that I did, nothing said that you should burst fire this gun over sustained fire for damage purposes. If the interest is there, I can do another video on the topic, but this one is already getting pretty long. But basically, the lower damage did not appear to make up for the fact that you were firing the gun faster. Not to mention that user error also plays a factor. Not bursting it fast enough, not holding the trigger down long enough. It's not really worth the effort to burst fire the weapon, at least for boss damage. The only times you should burst fire is probably for PvP, or if you want to try to tear off an elemental shield, but even then, it is not going to drastically affect your gameplay whatsoever. That being said, I will just show the sustained fire tests. In my tests, I was able to completely push out 2 full magazines worth of shots, 106 shots. However, the comfortability factor in this is not comfortable. I had about 18 shots remaining when the Siva density event triggered, which took about another 3 seconds to fire, so be aware that the longer you shoot, the riskier things get. 2 full magazines in the specific test where I hit the majority of my crits, I ended up with 207,694 damage with no weapons of light. With weapons, it's 280,387 damage. So nothing terribly impressive. It beats some of the weaker snipers, but not really too much else. What it didn't beat was super good advice though. But this depends on your conditions. 206 super good advice shots beat 106 Nemesis Star shots, which sounds like it makes sense. But if you don't have that much ammo in your super good advice, then the Nemesis Star will end up winning. Nemesis Star doesn't require double ammo bonuses for boss damage purposes because it doesn't gain anything from having them, at least in the Vosik counter specifically, whereas super good advice does gain something if you hope to keep up with damage against other weapons. We are only looking at things in a very specific case and situation with this, so please don't take what I said as the end-all be-all of the comparison, because it is a case-by-case basis. The more ammo you have with super good advice, the better the chance you have at dealing more damage than the Nemesis Star, but the odds of being able to completely fill up every single time is not incredibly high. That being said, I do prefer Nemesis Star for most activities and general play. In closing, the If Materia machine gun is a really fun gun to use for instances where you can get loads and loads of crits, but I would not use the gun outside any of those situations. At the end of the day, it is a Diluvian bullet hose machine gun, and they simply aren't very good at this time. Using it on regular ads isn't anything special at all, and it can do what every other machine gun can do. I was hoping for more from this thing, but it simply requires too much precision, and even then it falls short in damage compared to other weapons. For longer periods of engagement, it can crank out some pretty good damage, especially with ammo bonuses, but then again, so can a lot of other weapons. I don't think it's something to take too seriously at this time. That will do it for the Raid machine gun test. Up next, we'll be taking a look at the Raid sniper, along with some theory-crafted triple tap casket mag shenanigans as well. If you enjoyed the video, a positive rating would be pretty cool. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.